Happy Days Are Here Forever is a work of alternate history fiction set during the Cold War. The following events are based on the Cold War Iron Curtain, a world-divided mod for Hearts of Iron 4. 1950s, Part 2. The Curtain Falters. President Eisenhower's first 4 years as president seemed to fly by as November drew closer. Douglas MacArthur refused to run for the Republican nomination again. Therefore, the Republicans elected Joseph W. Martin, Jr. as their presidential candidate. In July of 1956, two situations, one in Africa and one in Europe, become a hot-button issues on the campaign: the Suez Crisis and the Hungarian Revolution. The timing could not have been worse for Eisenhower, as Election Day was just 4 short months away. Knowing that if he faltered during these crises, it would provide the Republicans with enough ammunition to end his presidency, Eisenhower took a hardline stance against Soviet aggression in Hungary and pledged to support the tripartite alliance. President Eisenhower issued an ultimatum against the Soviets and pledged support to the people of Hungary in the case of a Soviet intervention. Sensing the rising tensions, an unexpected mediator emerged to help the crisis in Hungary reach a diplomatic solution: Chairman Mao of the People's Republic of China. The Soviets and the Hungarians were both intrigued by this turn of events and agreed to hold talks in Krakow, hoping to find a compromise. The negotiations were intense, but on August 1st, Chairman Mao, General Secretary Khrushchev, and Chairman Nagy announced that a peaceful solution was reached. In exchange for Soviet recognition and permission of Hungary's liberal reforms, Hungary must agree to maintain a commitment to socialism and the Warsaw Pact. While it was not the outcome many were hoping for, pragmatists recognized that a complete abandonment of socialism in Hungary would all but guarantee a Soviet invasion of the country and the deaths of countless Hungarians. In the United States, the success of the Hungarian Revolution was accredited to the president's firm stance against Soviet aggression and his commitment to the free peoples of Europe. The victory gave him a huge boost in the polls, and despite the recent Israeli invasion of Sinai in late October, Dwight Eisenhower secured his second term as President of the United States. His second term in office included the establishment of NASA, the passing of the Second Public Works Appropriations Act, a raise in the minimum wage, and an expansion to the Federal Water and Air Pollution Control Acts. He also managed to complete a comprehensive reorganization of the Department of Defense, with help and advice from none other than his old friend and former political rival Douglas MacArthur. Lastly, he successfully oversaw the admission of Alaska and Hawaii as the 49th and 50th states, respectively. 1950s, Part 3. The Last Free Place in Cuba. On July 26, 1958, Communist forces in Cuba successfully overthrew the pro-American regime and established a provisional government on the island. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Cubans fled the country in order to escape the communist government, and the United States was faced with an unprecedented refugee crisis. In response, the American government relocated many of the Cuban refugees to Guantanamo Bay, which the United States had been leasing since 1903. The population of the small territory soared, and it quickly became an overpopulated slum. To help mediate this, the US spent the next year and a half investing heavily into the development of the area. As the money trickled in, the marshes of the bay slowly transformed into small towns, and crime started declining. For their part, the Cuban government refused to cash in any more of the US lease checks, declaring that the Guantanamo Bay lease was null, and demanded that the American military presence must vacate immediately. But these protests were ignored. Guantanamo City was officially founded on July 26 of 1960, exactly 2 years after the Cuban Revolution. The continued occupation of Guantanamo City would be a major thorn in US-Cuban relations for decades. In March of 1959, the normally quiet region of Scandinavia made headlines when Sweden proposed a purchase of American nuclear weapons. The reasons given by the Swedish government were the perceived rising threat of the Soviet Union and fears that they would try to diminish Swedish sovereignty through direct or indirect means. Fearing that this may come to pass, the American government agreed to the sale, transferring a few nuclear weapons to the nominally neutral Scandinavian country. Both President Eisenhower and Prime Minister Fritjof Domo expressed that the purpose of those weapons was purely for defense purposes and deterrence, a statement many hoped was true. The situation escalated further when Sweden proposed further nuclear cooperation with the United States, and their intention to join NATO, unequivocally ending Swedish neutrality. The proposal was accepted, and Sweden became the third Scandinavian country to join the alliance. The Soviets reacted by annexing the Svalbard archipelago in the Arctic Sea, insisting that it was a matter of securing Soviet naval defense capabilities in the area. The last major event of the decade happened in August of 1959, when the Yunnan Anti-Communist National Salvation Army launched a successful incursion into Yunnan province from its base of operations in Burma. Dubbed Operation Monsoon, official reports claim that the people of Yunnan joined in the anti-communist revolt due to Mao's failed agricultural policies in the region. The Yansa established its new headquarters in Kunming, finally leaving Burma behind and securing a strong foothold in mainland China. The event was a stunning success for Republican forces and caused no end of headaches for Chairman Mao, as his ability to lead China was continuously being brought into question by fellow Communist Party members. 1960, it's Kennedy for me. After 8 long and momentous years, the presidency of Dwight David Eisenhower was drawing to a close. His presidency would be remembered as a stunning success, both domestically and abroad. The heavy investment into the nation's economic development and infrastructure proved to bear fruit, as the United States closed the 1950s with a GDP of $2.57 trillion, while foreign policy experts agree that the Hungarian Revolution succeeded thanks to Eisenhower's pledge to support Hungarian independence from Moscow. As the wheels of democracy started moving again for the elections of 1960, the Democrats said goodbye to their most popular president since Franklin D. Roosevelt and nominated John Fitzgerald Kennedy as their candidate. Meanwhile, the Republicans nominated California Senator Richard Milhouse Nixon as their candidate. The election was famous for being the first time that presidential debates were broadcast over television rather than the radio, which many commentators noted gave Kennedy the advantage over Nixon due to his confident and clean appearance, as opposed to Nixon's fidgeting and seeming nervousness. The election was one of the closest in American history, but by the end of election night it was clear that John F. Kennedy had won the presidency. He was inaugurated on January 20th of 1961 as the United States' first Catholic president, and at the age of 43, the nation's youngest.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
1960s Part 1, the Beijing Spring. The situation of the world in 1960 was no less precarious than what it was in 1950. In Africa, civil wars were being fought in Angola and the former Belgian Congo, with help from Cuban communists in the former. Meanwhile, in the Far East, Mao's government was growing more and more unstable, as his lack of action against the KMT in Taiwan and Yunnan, as well as the absolute failure of the Great Leap Forward, had cast major doubt on his competence as leader of the party and the nation. Tensions reached their boiling point when in September of 1961, Mao's leadership was usurped by vice chairman of the CCP, Liu Shaoqi. Political chaos rocked the People's Republic as Mao's loyalists within the party and the PLA opposed this treason. But after 6 long months of internal strife, Mao Zedong was removed as leader of the PRC. On January 8th of 1962, he was stripped of all his titles and privileges, forced into early retirement, and placed under house arrest in a state-owned residence. This event, dubbed the Beijing Spring, would be the beginning of many economic reforms in China and open the country diplomatically to the West. In the ROC and Yunnan, this was seen as a tremendous victory for all Chinese people and a great step towards national unification. Meanwhile, in Africa, the American-backed FNLA was making steady gains against the Cuban and Soviet-backed MPLA in northern Angola, pushing them back across the Kwango River. Just over the border, the Free Republic of the Congo had captured Brazzaville and declared victory in the Congo crisis on November 11, 1961. The government, under the presidency of Antoine Gizenga, enacted socio-progressive reforms, including the illegalization of female genital mutilation, universal women's suffrage, and embarked on a path to industrial and agricultural modernization. The next week, the Eritrean War of Independence ignited on the Horn of Africa. Before President Kennedy could do anything, A much larger threat to global security stole all of his attention.